Hello, listeners. Been wondering how you can help the show? Probably not. But here are 5 things you can do. 1. Subscribe. Support the show by clicking the subscription link in the show notes. 2. Review on iTunes, on our website, www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com, or on whatever app you listen to. 3. Donate. When you go to our website, click the cute coffee cup icon. Or in the show notes, click the subscription link. 4. Share. Sharing really is caring. Tell your friends and even your enemies to check out the show. 5. Watch. Wait a minute, it's a podcast, not a movie. Actually, it's both. Check the show notes to find out where to watch the documentary. You can also rent it on Prime Video. That's it. Oh, one last thing. Enjoy this episode.
I'll have a blue Christmas without you. I'll be so blue just thinking about you. Decorations are red, I know green Christmas tree won't be the same, dear, if you're not here with me. And when those blue snowflakes start falling.
Oh, well, hello, listeners. Around here we say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. That was a snippet from the singing voice of tonight's guest, John Rain. And I picked John for tonight's episode, which is the last right before Christmas of 2023, because it's inspirational. John is a guy who has followed his dreams, led a very interesting life, and in the past year, he faced death twice and came back by the grace of God. So I think this is a story that, as you know, a lot of people are feeling a little down during these times, you might get some inspiration. And I think that's kind of a good way to end the year.
And when those blue snowflakes start falling, that's when those blue memories start calling. You'll be doing alright with your Christmas so white, but I'll have the blue Christmas.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey.
Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
So I have a very interesting guest tonight who I've been following on Facebook for quite a while. His name is John Rain, and I'm going to let him introduce himself to you. He's a very interesting guy. He's got a very interesting history of things he's done in his life. And the past year was quite crazy, especially with something that happened to him a couple months ago. But let's just start with who you are. Hey, John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here. I'm the
founder of Polestar Pictures, and I'm one of the principals involved with the company at this point. And we make movies.
That's so awesome. You make good movies too. You've won quite a few awards. You want to talk about some of your recent titles that people, if they haven't seen them, they should check them out?
Finding Purpose, The Road to Redemption. That's probably the biggest one going on right now. That's the one I'm most proud of because we had a very limited budget on that, and it's won like 30 awards so far. So we're really excited about it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Do you write them and star in them, or what's it typically like for the pictures that you create?
Indie film is make do. That's what it should really be called, make do films, because there's hardly any budget to do anything. So a lot of the times, yeah, I've had to write, act, direct, run a camera, clapboard, cook, you name it. We've done it all.
You make the props too, right? Kind of an artist on the side as well. Do some of the prop work as well for your films?
Well, yeah, the props kind of evolved from my artistic abilities. Back in the day, I used to sculpt and paint, and I got involved with a company called Smooth On way, way, way back in the day before it was even popular. And I started learning how to use synthetic materials to make masks and prosthetics and that sort of stuff.
Wow, that's great. So do you have makeup too as your background? Have you done, because I asked because I've made a couple indie films. I made a drama, and for me, when I made an indie film, I got a guy who was connected and had great crew in the local area. So you usually get people that, you know, what I did is I hired someone that had made a movie but was a SFX or you know, a special effects guy.
Right.
But he had directed something. So he directed and he brought a great crew that are usually on some of the bigger shows with him for it. And so that's kind of the way that I did it.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of Polestar Pictures, just before we go into the meat of the story today, is that all you do, or do you need to do a day job as well?
No, that's all I do. That's all I do. I help my wife. She's got another company that she runs that we created called Rain Jewelry. I help her out with that. But yeah, pictures is what I do now.
Yeah, and if I, you know, correct me if I'm wrong on this, John, but you have a very interesting past. I mean, you've been a lot of things in your life. I think you did magic for a while. Were you ever homeless? I mean, there's like a bunch of stuff in your history.
Yeah, I read like Forrest Gump. I've done quite a few things. I was actually homeless. Yeah, I ran away from home when I was younger. I was 15, and I was homeless on the streets for 2.5 years out in California. And I got a job as a painter, and then I got a job doing nightclubs. I was too young to go inside the club because I wanted to do magic. So I convinced the club owners to let me hang around outside, and all the people that were waiting to go inside the club, I would walk up and down and do magic tricks for them. And they would tip me. And I started making pretty good money. Then the people, the patrons started saying, hey, where's that magic kit? So now the clubs were bringing me back and they were paying me $50 an hour. Plus I was getting my tips. So it was a good gig. Yeah.
When did you get into the singing?
Oh, that was kind of an accident. I was very young. Let me see, I was just 18, 19. And I was with my uncle in a car dealership in California, a Cadillac dealership. And there was a guy by the name of Alan Glass that was there and actually discovered me singing in the bathroom.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't have any idea who he was. I'd never sang before or anything. So I went down to the studio that night, and after about 6 beers, I got singing, and that's how that all started.
Now, how did you end up to your true love, I guess, which you, outside of your family, which is making movies? How did that evolve? And one of my co-hosts that can't be with us now because he's starting a Netflix series, he's a typical actor. I mean, his side hustle is going to thrift stores and buying stuff and reselling it, you know, which he has a bunch of videos out about how he does it.
Yeah.
But he gets gigs like this one. He'll be working for like 6 months, which is great. But how did you get to the point where you could just do this? Did you make a bunch of shorts and then figure out I'm all over the place a little bit, but I've had a nightmare experience with distributors, especially with my first feature.
Yeah.
And even if you have a lawyer and a contract, I mean, you have to go after them and you still don't. It's just sometimes it's not even worth it.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, how did you figure it out so that you could do this on your own, filmmaking? Because I'm sure people will be interested in that too. And did you have a secret story or a secret success formula for the distribution side?
I got started over 30 years ago doing a film, and I had a kind of a tragic event unfold in my life, and I kind of went away for a few years. I was that guy that was in the bathrobe, not shaving, sitting on a chair, not doing anything. And one of my good friends came in and said, "You got to stop this. What do you want to do?" And out of the blue, I said, "Well, I never made a movie." And he said, "Well, we'll finance your film if you want to make a movie." And I've never made a movie. I didn't know the first thing about making a movie, but I had thought about it. So I made my first film, and it was an absolute piece of garbage. I was really embarrassed. I can remember sitting at the premiere, sinking lower and lower into my chair as this thing was unfolding on the big screen. But nobody really kicked me in the nards for it. I got a lot of people willing to help me out and say, "Hey, this is what you got to do, and this is what you got to do." And I listened to people because I did have quite a repertoire of professional people that I'd met in my time, singing, doing magic, entertainment. I was always doing entertainment. So I'd met some pretty big people. I just went on and started making another film and then another film. And, they would be a little less trashy than the last film. And it was a lot of trial and error. I just loved it. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with working with the business and the creativity behind it. And then not having a lot of money to really delve into professionalism of it got me into all the aspects of it, of acting, creating prosthetics, special effects, editing, putting music scores together. But you got to remember, this was back in the early 90s.
So were you using film? Yeah,
Yeah, no, see, yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's when DSLRs started becoming available to people. So now, you didn't have to spend $50,000 for a 35 millimeter camera plus the film. Now you could, get a decent camera for like $5,000, and it was all digital, and you could shoot as much as you want. And you didn't have to worry about film costs or Avid rental bays and all that kind of stuff. So I came into it right at that time when everything was kind of like taking a swing.
Wow. And that first film where you sunk into the seat, was that a short or a feature?
No, it's a feature film.
Wow, yeah. I made a feature film too, John, and I did it. I took a 2-week vacation from work, full-time job, family, my house became the set, a command post, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then, 2 weeks, hardest vacation I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
And then when it's done, I had to go return stuff back. And then I was taking advantage of the mass state tax. And so I had to get all my receipts in order and submit that so I could get some money back to pay for post-production. But
yeah,
people don't realize, at least for me, that was a 5-year gig. Kind of rushed it on pre-production, but I wrote a script, got the team, did pre-production, shot it, and then only had to reshoot an extra day once it was done. And then post-production, and I was on people's schedules at that point.
Yeah.
I didn't have a budget.
Yeah.
That took a while. And then film festivals and then distribution.
Yeah.
So for me, it was 5 years. I don't know what your typical approach is, but I don't think people realize start to finish how much of a commitment indie filmmaking is.
Well, what I did was wham, bam, thank you, bam films. It was like a week worth of shooting, edit them down, slap them in a box and get them out there. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, I made a lot of what I call bubblegum film. I would write them, and I had college students. Back then it was Rainstorm Productions. They would come on and work with me for college credits. They'd have to be there for the full quarter, and then I would be able to give them a credit. So they would come on, and they worked really hard to help me produce all of these earlier films.
Distribution. Did you just self-distribution, or what did you do for that?
Yeah, again, see, that's all changed through the years. I can remember when getting on Amazon, that was a big deal. And you couldn't do shorts on Amazon. They had to be 90 minutes. They had to be certain Kodaks, blah, blah, blah. And now just about anybody can get on Amazon. So it was that, and having DVDs printed or Blu-rays printed and distributing them through, one of the fly-by-night companies that would give you a contract, and you would make pennies on the dollar. And, indie films, it isn't what you want to get into if you're going to want to make money. If you want to look at spending a lot of time and a lot of money, then that's for you. It's like a glorified hobby,
Yeah.
but it turned into a passion of mine. And when I had the chance to have somewhat of a budget, that was $15,000 was my most expensive film that I did. And that was Finding Purpose, The Road to Redemption. And with that $15,000, I made this feature film that got me recognized in the Hollywood Times over Oscar weekend and won me the Hollywood Silver Screen Award for Best Picture of the Year on an indie film. I also got a couple of nominations for Best Actor. My good friend Tom Stoops has been with me for 10 years here in Pennsylvania, played one of the lead roles, and he did a phenomenal job.
You know what? I bet you the audience is we have a pretty good audience on here. I bet you they're going to want to check out the film. Can you give us a quick synopsis of what it's about?
Yeah, it's based off a true story about my brother, my handicapped brother, Rod. I wrote this story years ago. I can't even think how many years ago I wrote it. Rod was still living with me at that time, and I wanted to make this film with him in it. I was actually going to have Rod be in the film. He was Down syndrome, but he wasn't, he was still capable. He was mentally disabled, but he was pretty smart on some things.
Yeah.
And he always wanted to be a star. He'd always tell me that, make me a star. So it was originally wrote about a Vietnam veteran who comes back to find he's lost everything. Parents have passed on. He's inherited taking care of his brother, but he's an alcoholic. He has a hard time handling money. He can't take care of himself, more or less taking care of Rod. And what happens is the state moves in and takes his brother away from him. And then there's this big pursuit where he goes and basically kidnaps his brother, takes him on the run in hiding because nobody's going to take his brother away from him. So that's the basis of the story.
Was Rain Man, I know it's a different storyline, but was that kind of an inspiration? Did you love that movie? And did you think, I'm going to write something, but along my lines, how this would happen for me?
I never, people ask me that all the time. They ask me, where do I get my inspiration from? Who did you follow? Who did you look up to in film? And I have to remind them, film wasn't a passion of mine back then. Yeah. It was a happenstance that I jumped into. So I didn't really have a filmography of things that I watched. So all of this stuff basically came from my concepts in my head. And my big drive for that picture was Rod wanted to be a movie star. And I wanted to help him get there. He was only supposed to live till he was 15, and he made it till 47.
Wow.
So yeah, and he was a big part of my life.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's a great story. There's a great personal story behind that. Now, it seemed like you had finally made it. You great family. You're comfortable. You're not sleeping out on the road. I mean, you pretty much, and you're doing what you love to do. And then COVID hit you in 2022, and that was a scary ride, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for it. I remember being in the hospital, and I couldn't breathe. It was like breathing razor blades.
Oh, God.
And they had put me up into the ICU, and I knew I was in trouble at that point. And I remember telling my wife, please don't let them put me on a ventilator. I don't want to go on a ventilator. So I was up in the ICU room, and they were watching me constantly coming in. And the prognosis didn't look well for me because I was over 60. I did have some health problems, and it was looking like, okay, this might be my ticket out. So I was in a lot of pain. I was hurting a lot. And gets a little emotional.
I can imagine. I got to tell you, I look like I stalk her from afar on Facebook. I mean, I would see your posts. I continued following you because I always thought you were such an interesting, upbeat guy in what you were doing. And then I saw that post, and I was like, "Oh, damn!" And it seemed really bad.
It was.
And then you bounced back. Look, I just had COVID. I hope I'm not kind of the same track you're on. I mean, and it wasn't as bad, but I got the fatigue still, and then I got sick again, so I'm still battling kind of the congestion a little bit. And I'm over 60, and I'm a heavier guy, so it's not super great. But yeah, but you rebounded and you recovered. How did you recover? Was it just, did they give you a certain drug that worked, or what? Was it prayer? What worked for you?
I think it was divine interception. I really do. Because as I laid on the hospital bed, I had a personal prayer to the Great Father. And I didn't ask for more time. I just said, look, if you're going to take me, that's your will. I'm willing. Just please don't let me suffer. And it wasn't 5 minutes after I said that prayer, Bob, that I started feeling better.
Wow, that's amazing. Were you spiritual before that, John? Were you a religious guy, or was that your come to Jesus moment during this episode?
I haven't had a real epiphany of coming to anything religious. I've always been the guy that you don't need religion to be a good person. And my mother was very religious, and that stuck with me for a lot of my life. I've questioned existences. I've went down those paths. I've went down those roads, but there's something different when you're laying there on your deathbed and there's no other place to turn. So you take that step, and that's what I did. I made no promises. I made no vows. I just simply asked for some mercy, and I was given it. And I was given the opportunity to get out of that hospital. And they dubbed me the Miracle Man when I walked out of the hospital, because the doctor came in and he says, we can't believe this. We cannot believe this. And I said, well, here I am.
It's another movie, John, because it's not the end of the story. I mean, you recovered, you went back to your life. You're working on your next film, which I believe is a vampire kind of epic saga. Correct?
Oh boy, I've been working on this for 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you just give us a quick tease, and we'll go into the next part of your story.
Well, Vampire Penance it started out as a story that I wrote 28 years ago, which was called Evergreen is the Blood. And I called it Evergreen is the Blood because I was looking for a unique title. That's what I do. And I found out evergreen meant everlasting. And I thought, wow, the blood of the vampire, that's everlasting. Mm. So evergreen is the blood. So that's how I came up with that whole concept there.
Wow.
And I originally wrote it as this really tight 2-person piece, which was about a guy that discovers a vampire in his backyard hiding in the shade who's wounded. And he takes her in and kind of nurses her back to health. But there's like this tug and war relationship of she's confused why he's doing this, and she wants to eat him, and she's struggling with those emotions. So it wasn't really a love story, but it was kind of like both people were finding some things out about themselves with stuff that had happened to both of them. Mm. And that's how it originally went. And it grew from there.
Seen some of the things on Facebook, some of the photography and the props. It looks a bit scarier than that.
Well, yeah, when I first started, I actually filmed it twice. I filmed this movie twice under Evergreen is the Blood. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it was coming out. It wasn't working right. And I went back and I tried to fix it. And I said, you know what? We've gotten too big with trying to do all these effects, and we're losing track of the story. And I think the story's bigger than that. So I started nurturing the story. Got a lot of people mad at me.
I would imagine, yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah, a lot of people, especially the people that were in the film, that came down a couple of times to film. And then I said, I'm not releasing it. And they couldn't accept that fact.
Yeah.
But I just won those awards. And I said, we don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward.
Yep.
At least that's my motto. I'm not one of these guys that just wants to do a film just to do the film. I wanted to keep going better each step of the way.
And are you happy with where it's going now?
I'm very happy. And one of my producers, Mark Weiss, actually, I thought he was going to kill me, and he didn't. He actually ended up becoming my partner in Polestar Pictures and said, you know what? We respect what you're doing. Let's make this big. And that's where we're at now.
So that's great. Looking forward to that. And when we get to the end, we'll have you promote, when it's coming out and all that good stuff. But life was going along pretty well. And then something happened when you're with your family at an event this summer. You want to explain that?
Yeah, I was out celebrating my wife's birthday with my daughter. My daughter took us all out to this really fancy restaurant, and we had a really good time. And it was still warm out, and she said, "Why don't you come by the house? We'll have a few drinks on the side porch, and just enjoy each other's company for a little bit because we don't get to hang out that much with each other." So we did, and she had mixed me a drink, and I was sitting there talking. We were laughing. And the last thing I remember was looking over at my grandkids, and that was it. The next thing I know, I'm waking up and I'm being put into this ambulance. I had had a major heart attack, and my daughter, Brandy, actually brought me back.
And she, not to go down a different trail, but just to promote her, she's actually quite the singer herself, isn't she?
Oh, yeah. Her and my other daughter, Sierra, both gifted, talented performers.
Oh, that's great. And so I was following that. I'm like, you mentioned you had a heart attack, and I was like, oh my God. So I was like, it's like a viewer watching your movies falling off their, it's the second half of the movie and they fall off their seat with this unexpected twist. And, and look, I know it's harder for you than for us, but
Yeah.
glad you came out of it. But
Thank
then
you.
kind of shared something. You did a nice little production of an NDE. You shared that. It took you a while, but then you came out and said, you know what? I think it's time maybe to share this. And that's kind of what got me to reach out to you for this call today was you had your own near-death experience and you were going to keep it to yourself, but then you decided to share it. So you want to talk about what changed your mindset, and then we could talk about what happened.
Yeah, it wasn't an easy decision. I struggled with it. I didn't even tell my family everything, what had happened to me, because I got to be honest with you, Bob, I wasn't sure what happened to me. I didn't know if this was a figment of my imagination. I didn't know if this was a dream. I didn't know what transpired. But as time went on, and believe me, I thought about this on a daily basis because it was more than a dream. It was the best way to describe it is like when you go on vacation somewhere and you come back and you have that very vivid memory of where you were at. And it's nothing like a dream. And that's what it was for me. And that's what was really bugging me. I have passed out before. I've been knocked out before. And it was a totally different experience. It was like a fraction of a second went by and you wake up. You didn't have any idea of how much time went by until you started getting your collection back to you. This, when I was there in this place, it was like I was there for hours. And when I came back, it just didn't seem like it was possible. Like, wait, I've been gone all this time. It was totally different. And the things that were said to me and things I saw, I don't see how my mind could have fabricated any of that.
I've had several near-death experiences on the show. One was an ice mountain climber who was dying on the side of a mountain, and there's been a couple others as well. And they all have kind of like there's some similarities, but there are some things different. I'm curious before we go into more about what happened to you, what you saw. What was different when you came back? Was it like very loud? Was the sensation surreal? Did your body all of a sudden your body hurt? I mean, what was going on as soon as you came back?
As soon as I came back, I was actually asked. They wanted to know if I wanted to stay or if I wanted to go back, and I chose to come back. And when I came back, it was instantaneous. I remember coughing, and the first thing I heard was my daughter said, "Oh, thank God." And I sat up, and the brightness was gone, and it was darkness. I had been out to where the sun went down, and there were all these people around me, and I was wet. I was soaking wet. And I remember saying, why am I wet? And my son-in-law had thrown water on me, trying to get an emotion out of me. My wife actually held my head and my tongue back. It was my daughter that instructed everybody, my wife, my son-in-law, because she was first in CPR and healthcare. And my daughter's the actual one that did the pumping on my chest. And I got to tell you, for a little girl, she racked me up.
I was going to say, when you came back, I mean, you must have gone from bliss to painful. I mean, did she crack a rib or anything?
Well, it wasn't instantaneous. I felt a little stiffness, but the next day, I mean, it felt like you put me through a ringer. It felt like she hit me with a freight train. And for about a month afterwards, it was very, very painful, very hard to go to sleep at night. Yeah, but she didn't break any ribs. But the doctor told her, he said, if you hadn't have done what you did, your father wouldn't have been there by the time the ambulance got there.
Yeah, children really are a blessing, aren't they? That's excellent.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that my daughter said that really registered with me. She said, Dad, now we really share something. And I said, what's that? She says, you gave me life and I gave yours back.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. You know, a question comes to mind, John, about when you were in the other realm or other world. I mean, when I've talked to other people, it's consciousness. Here it's heavier, it's air, it's whatever, it's a different thing. So the feeling must have been totally different in the other space versus here, correct?
Honestly, I felt like I was here, like only I was there.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't really.
Did you breathe? Did you notice you were breathing, or were you not even aware? You were just taking in what you were, absorbing what you were experiencing?
It was like waking up in a different world.
Mm.
That's all I can really relate it to. A world that was super clear and bright and peaceful. I felt that there were other people there, but I only corresponded with these three entities that were there. And the one was the only one that really had communication going with me. I wasn't scared. It wasn't like I was scared of being there. There's this overwhelming calm about it. And as he spoke to me, I felt this real spiritual kind of connection, especially with the things that was being said.
Now you mentioned entities, so it's not like humanoids. It's just what was the appearance like? And was the communication telepathic versus spoken words? What was that like?
I felt it wasn't like I was sitting there having a conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
It was much deeper than that. And even though the other two were not communicating with me, I felt some sort of connection.
Huh.
It felt like this, like I was just connected, like we were all sharing this moment and what was being said to me. And an entity, I mean, by the fact that I couldn't see, especially the one that was before me, I couldn't see his face. It was so bright. And the others were kind of subdued brightness where I could kind of make out a facial feature, but it was like just this bright light where you couldn't really see anything. But the one that stood in the center just outshined everything. There was like this magnificent brightness about him. And I say him because the vocal that I was getting, that I was receiving, seemed very male.
Was there a white light that you went into the tunnel to get there, or were you just there?
No, I was just there. I didn't see any of that.
Ah.
And when I passed out, I didn't know I was passing out. I didn't get a pain in my chest. I didn't feel dizzy. I was just laughing at my kids and then woke up in this other place. It was like that. I don't remember anything.
Was there anything going on around those three entities that, was there other activity going around, or was it just that was it? That was it, kind of the whole world right there.
Well, no, I was in like a beautiful place of trees and flowers, and it looked very similar to here, only on a much more, I don't know what I want to say, radiant scale. Everything was just brilliantly beautiful. And these entities, I believe they were hovering. They were like off the ground. I was transfixed on what was being said to me. It was very loving. It was very loving. No, I was not being condemned for anything.
And did you felt like you were home? You'd been here before and you returned, or did these feel like familiar entities, beings, or was it just something new that was just a great experience?
No, I did feel a sense of deja vu. I felt a sense of like, when you see an individual and you go, where have I seen that guy before? Where have I? And you can't put your finger on it.
Yeah.
I felt that. I felt like, I know this. I know this. But as my conversation progressed, it was very clear to me that I was not going to be allowed to have any more information than what they were willing to give me, and there was no way I could get it on my own.
When you came out of it, what surprised you about your NDE, your near-death experience? Was it the fact that this is what a near-death experience is? Did it something that was a slow awakening or slow realization to you? What was the biggest thing that once your mind, you got your head around and said, wow, I had a near-death experience? What was the biggest thing that surprised you that was different or that you wouldn't have thought?
Yeah, Bob, I didn't say that immediately. I remember coming out and like I said, it was dark and the brightness went away, but it was still kind of fuzzy. And the first thing I said, I think it was to the EMP guy, I said, "Are you one of the angels?" I said, right out. I just blurted it out. And they just all kind of giggled about that. And then I quickly shut up because I was like, what am I saying? I don't want, yeah, that had to sound insane.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my biggest thing was what happened? What happened here when I was getting up? I was like, what happened? And then as I got into the ambulance and my mind started to what they called it rebooting because they were asking me questions and I was very despondent. I couldn't remember a lot, like what day it was, where I lived, all of that stuff. It was like it was hard. It's like I knew it, but I couldn't remember it. And they told me, he says, look, you had lack of oxygen, your blood pressure dropped here. You technically were gone. Your body's rebooting. As everything comes back, you're going to start slowly remembering everything. And by the time I got to the hospital, I was remembering a lot.
When did you start sharing stuff with people? If that's not too personal, but when did you decide to say, I can't keep this to myself. I gotta tell people, and how did they react?
I haven't really discussed it other than the little piece that I made. This is the most I've talked about it.
Wow, I'm honored. This is awesome.
This is with you. No, I really, I swear to you, I've had very little conversations about this, other than the fact of what I put in the video, and a few people asked me some questions about it, and I was more than willing to answer. But I still haven't really delved into what everything that transpired, what was said. For some reason, I don't know, subconsciously, I'm holding back because I'm not sure how people would respond to me if I started really saying what was said. And the other thing is, it felt very personal. It felt like I was being given this genuine gift to come back, to have peace, to go on for what I'm supposed to be doing. And eventually people will realize the interconnectedness of this universe.
Do you know what your purpose is? I mean, your last film was Finding Purpose, right? And it was your best film ever, and there was really meaning in that,
Yeah.
Did you understand what your purpose was after this?
I understand what everyone's purpose is.
Oh, that's great. All right. And are you able to share that, or is that something that you think we need to find on our own?
Well, yeah, I don't think there's a magic sentence I'm going to give anybody. And I think anything that I do say is going to go like an ember in the night. It's going to burn and then fade out as people go on with their lives. They tend to forget things that they shouldn't forget. I think the importance of life is to know that we are all connected. That I will say, we are all connected, every one of us, and in ways that mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. There's threads throughout the universe.
Uh, and is there is so just to go over pretty much what happened when you had your experience, you woke up, instantly you were in a place, a new place, you had these three entities. Were
Mhm.
you taken anywhere, or was it just being with them during your time of your near-death experience that you recall? And when did it come up that say, would you like to go back?
I was with them, but also was shown things, almost in a surreal portal sort of a way.
Mm,
Um, and the question arose when I started asking questions about my family
yeah.
and that. And I know one of my biggest things was that I will say to you, I said to them, well, I want to see my kids again if I stay here. And the thing that struck me really with that is they said, oh, you'll see them again.
Uh, I well, first of all, I want to thank you so much for sharing this story with us. I mean, how has it affected you? COVID affected you, your experience. You had a prayer,
Mhm.
and you had became the miracle man. This is two miracles. Does that make you a saint, John, or do you need another one? I'm trying
Oh,
to.
please don't. No, don't even put me in that category. I had nothing to do with my recovery. I couldn't do anything to make myself better. So absolutely not. This came from an intervention of some sort. This came from a higher power. I'm simply the vessel in which they made me whole again. I have no powers. I have nothing like that.
How did it change your faith or reinforce it? How are you different from you were different after COVID a bit? You were very thankful and feeling blessed. How did this make you feel? And has it changed you much going forward, or just reinforced who you were?
No, it changed me. COVID changed me somewhat. This last experience put me over the top. My attitude towards people is love, even those that have done me um, not so good.
Yeah,
I had a big struggle with some people here that were spreading hideous stuff about me, and the anger that I felt towards these individuals became like sand on the shore. It just got washed away, and I no longer focus on what the negativity of individuals are. I'd rather look at the compassion that's here for all of us, and I feel that. So it's changed me in the way that anger wise towards my fellow man.
and as we head into Christmas, a lot of times people don't feel very happy or feel very fortunate, and they're down this time of year.
Yeah.
What message would you have for people in the holidays as they listen to what happened to you, and no matter what station they're at in life, is there any message you have?
Wow, that's hard to put on me. I'll tell you from my own experience what those feelings are manifested by our earthly presence and what we've become accustomed to. And those feelings are non existent when we leave. It goes back to that old saying, it's not what you build up here, it's what you take with you. And people have lost all sense of that. And in my talks when I was gone, that was a big thing that I had concerns with. Prosperity. I'm very, very, very prosperous and not in an earthly way. And what was given to me made me so rich that all of this just doesn't matter. I mean, I'd looked at it to where I was going to walk away from films, I was going to walk away from everything. But the practical side of me said, other people are involved with this. But I have told my partners, once this production's over, that's it. I'm going to enjoy life. I'm going to get to know people. And I'm doing that now. I'm doing that now.
Yeah. I was just thinking that exact same thing. I mean, you certainly are doing it right now on this. I mean, I'm sure in your life, but also on this podcast as well, which is great. And I'm just very honored that you've taken the time with me for it. The final question is, you have no fear of death and you definitely believe in an afterlife, John, or what's your thought on that?
I believe that what happened to me was real. I do not fear death. I do not. I feel that from what transpired with me, if it was real, and I believe in my heart now that it was, that we will all be connected again. And I don't believe that the things that we do in ways that are evil to each other here will manifest themselves there. That real pity, real compassion, real love will find us again. And all of this that we're living here will be a dream that took us there.
Well, that is a great way to end it. But I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas. I know you say Merry Christmas in your household.
Yes, I do.
Ours.
Yeah.
We do in ours, John. I know some people will shame us for that. But what would you have that Vampire Penance? Is that what it was called? The film is in production
it's
now?
Vampire Penance, The Atonement of John Wolfe. It's a trilogy. There's 3 stories. We kind of start in the middle like Star Wars.
And do you think that'll be out for release in 2024?
Our game plan is we're trying to get it in the can by 2024. There's a lot of talks going on behind the scenes that people, aren't privy to. We have video games that we've been working on. We have costuming. We have things that we're working on for Halloween events. There's a lot of things that have been going on with this thing for the last 3 years.
Well, I mean, if it shows up at Halloween 2024, that would be kind of awesome. Is there a website, John, or a way that, I mean, I know you want to be with your family and enjoy time, but is there a website where people could go find out more about POLESTAR Pictures and what you've been working on and what's coming up next?
Yeah, what we decided to do is we're going to go to the Indiegogo platform, and we put up a pre-launch page there. If you go to Indiegogo and you look up Vampire Penance, it'll take you to the pre-launch page. We're not getting any monies yet because we're building up the pre-launch to that. We've got a lot of people behind us that are putting money into it. And we decided to go that route because I don't want to bash Hollywood. So don't misconstrue what I say. We had some really large producers that were coming on to finance the film. But the thing about the guys that control the kitchen is they want to control the meal. And I don't want to give that up. So I said to my team, why don't we do this differently? Why don't we make this film the way we want to do it? I mean, I've got Joe Sabatino. He's a Golden Globe nominee from, his, and Joe is really into the script. I know Joe brushes elbows with, like Woody Harrelson and some of the Robert Zemeckis, who's interested in being a producer on our show. And he says to me, let's do it. Let's get this thing produced ourselves. So we kind of developed a way to put the average Joe into this film. If you go to Indiegogo and you sign up, it'll take you over to vampirepenance.com. And you can actually audition for roles in this film. And we're shying away from putting big names in the film because we want the film to become the big name. And we think we got something really rock solid there. So that's kind of our game plan.
Well, if there's a role for a podcaster that has a grisly death from a vampire or whatever, I'll put up an audition tape for that. But
absolutely, there's all kinds of roles we can fit you in. Right?
My co-host is the real true actor. He's awesome. He's been in everything, and he'll love listening to this. So, John, so thankful that you're here. So thankful that you shared your story with me. And I think people will be thankful listening to it around Christmas, and will be looking forward to your next movie. And in the interim, watching Finding Purpose, which I guess is pretty much everywhere. Is it on Tubi? Is it on Amazon Prime?
Yeah, all of those. I think you can even buy it at a lot of locations. I think Best Buy, you can get it, Walmart. It's all over the place. Bayview actually has the rights to the film for the next 7 years. So I don't really pay attention to it, because I've seen it as many times.
I know what that's like. I know it's watching a movie 100 times and then you don't even want to look at it again.
Yeah.
Well, excellent. And so I'll end with thank you for your time, John, and Merry Christmas. I really appreciate getting to finally reach out and talk to you. I've been following you on Facebook, and you are a generally good man and a kind heart, and your story, I think, will inspire others.
Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate you coming to me and allowing me this opportunity. You seem like one heck of a nice guy yourself, and I hope you have the very merriest of Christmas ever.
And before we wrap, one quick producer's note. You heard John mention in this episode a couple times about a video he made. He created a 6-minute, very well-produced short called Beyond the Veil that gave a glimpse into what he went through with his near-death experience. We went into much more in this episode, but you may want to check it out. I asked John if he would graciously post it to YouTube, which he did, so you will check the show notes, see that link. You'll also see a link to check out his Indiegogo link to for Vampire Penance, and if you would like to audition for a role. And lastly, I always mention that if someone buys me a coffee, I'll give them a shout out. I had not done that. I was remiss. For an old high school friend named Jennifer Willman, twice she's bought me coffee. So Jen, thank you so much for being a listener, for being a fan of the show, and for getting me a couple coffees. I appreciate it. And to all, a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holiday, and good night. Be well.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode, and the world will know how swell you are.